we start to understand how we are actually involved in this process of meditation, how you are involved in your mind. It's easy to forget this. Right? This is about you and what you do in your mind, right? Sometimes we think, oh, meditation is just something that happens to me. You know, actually it's more complicated than that. When we have a good meditation, I'm the good meditator. I'm the one who did it. When we have a bad meditator, all thoughts just kept on coming. Right? So we kind of like do a bit of a cop-out. The real skill for meditators is to start to learn how we are involved in our mind, how we are involved in our meditation. We're not just passive observers. This is something that we are active in. And in the context of today's session about love and hate, we need to start to understand where this stuff is coming from. Who is developing those thoughts of love? Who is developing those thoughts of hate? These aren't things that are just happening to us. This is something that we are doing, that we are doing ourselves. We need to start to take responsibility for our mind. We need to start training our mind. This is our job. If we never take responsibility, if we never train, we can't expect any change. We can't expect any growth. Because we are led by our defilements. And let's face it, it feels really good to hate. It feels wonderful to have anger in your mind. Do you agree? And people aren't sure where this is going, right? Well, you know, it does. Otherwise, we wouldn't do it so often, would we? We wouldn't open the newspapers so that we could become enraged. We wouldn't check in with the nightly news or current affairs so that we could feel the adrenaline in the body. We wouldn't talk to all our friends about how we hate so-and-so so much. What we experience with these minds is a lot of power, a lot of energy. Before, a gentleman said, you know, love is energy, but so is hate. You know, hate is just bubbling and boiling in our body. It makes us so powerful. And this is how it survives in our mind, because it's intoxicating. We love it. We love it because we don't see the danger. We love it because we don't see the drawbacks, the disadvantages. If we were a little bit wise, we should be able to make the kind of mental jump to understanding, oh, when people hate me, I don't like it. Maybe I shouldn't hate other people. When people are angry at me, I don't like it. Maybe I shouldn't get angry at other people. Like, pretty simple jump to make, right? But we don't really care about others as much as we care about ourselves. And whenever we feel this anger, this hate, we feel kind of justified. They hurt me. They're not doing it my way. They hurt my friend. They don't support my political views. Start to see a pattern here emerging, right? It's very much about us. our attachment to a view of ourself, an attachment to me, my. And so in many ways, hate and anger, resentment is a way that we reconfirm this view of self, a way that we protect ourself. And that energy, that power, that passion we feel when it's in our mind is a way to protect, a self-defense. So what we need to do is to develop that mindfulness that allows us to know what is going on in the mind. And so I congratulate anyone who says, yes, Bhante, yes, I have hate in my heart. I congratulate you, because there are so many people in this world who have never seen it in themselves, are unaware of when it arises, are in denial when it's there, and because of this, they are incapable of working on their mind. And so it's much better to know that you've got hate in your heart than to simply pretend it's not there. And I do see this with meditators all the time. People who come and say, oh yes, I practice metta meditation, I practice loving kindness meditation. And then you see them being mean to their wife or being rude to the bus driver. And you think, well, what happened there? And this is a tendency for us as spiritual practitioners sometimes to believe our own propaganda a little bit too much, believe the hype too much. But at least we are trying to develop those minds of love. Something that will help us more and more is to develop that mindfulness, to see what's going on. And that mindfulness tells us something. It is information, data. And that's why I did that exercise with you before about letting go. I asked you to see what's going on right here, right now, in this body. Did you notice how much tightness and tension you're carrying? Did anyone not feel any tightness or tension in their body? Did anyone not feel it relax? So how did it feel to have tightness and tension in your body? You only really know when you start to relax, right? Okay. And it's the same with our thoughts. What we're developing is an awareness of our thoughts. We're starting to see them more clearly. We want to understand what is going on. We want to be able to analyze this data, this information that we've learnt through our mindfulness. We see what's going on. We need to be able to identify, is this useful or unuseful? Is this wholesome or unwholesome? Is this skillful, unskillful? Is this beneficial or unbeneficial? Is this good or is this bad for me, for others? We need that information gained through mindfulness. And then we need some wisdom, some discernment to go, okay, is this something I want in my mind? Is this something I don't want in my mind? But for us, it's going to be very difficult because, as I said before, that feeling of hate or anger or resentment is very powerful, very intoxicating. We're going to be quite easily seduced by it. But if you keep examining deeper and deeper, you start to see, actually, this is not peaceful, this is not still, this is not calm. This is a kind of thought, a kind of feeling which isn't leading me towards more peace, more calm. You start to identify when these things appear in the mind, I am not peaceful, I am not calm. And so if that's how it is, then you start to learn to let it go. And so this is how we start to begin analysing the drawbacks, the adinavas, the drawbacks, the disadvantages. This is an important part of our practice. We all hear the Buddha or enlightened leaders kind of saying, avoid hate, avoid anger, cultivate love. So we have this kind of sense of a spiritual teacher sharing some disadvantages with us, like it'll only lead to your harm, it'll only lead to your ruin. And yet we're not quite convinced yet, right? We need to see it in our own mind. This is how we start to develop wisdom, this experiential understanding in our own mind. And so, of course, many of you will know that the Buddha, he went around constantly telling people hate, ill will, anger, resentment, these things are bad. And he talked about them over and 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 over again. But people are slow learners, right? You are slow learners. We all are slow learners, right? It takes so long. Even when you hear this over and over again, it takes so long to understand it. Yeah? Sometimes, we expect other people to kind of learn and change and grow and to become good people. And we forget just how difficult it is to change our own mind, right? We want to change other people. We forget how hard it is just to grow spiritually ourselves. And so the Buddha, he constantly talked about these things, and he constantly talked about the drawbacks. Say something like ill will. An image that he used to talk about ill will is the image of a bubbling bowl of boiling water. We want our mind to be clear and calm and still and peaceful. But when there's ill will in our mind, you feel that bubbling, boiling, agitated energy of hate coursing through the body and mind. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, it's energizing, right? You feel hot, right? It's bubbling and it's boiling. This is how he tried to get people to understand, when that's in your mind, it's not good, not a good feeling. Another image he used for ill will was the image of a sick person. A sick person. A person who cannot enjoy anything. I've been a bit sick the last week with a bad cold, and everything is meh. Meh. Delicious food. Comfortable bed. Nice weather outside. You can't enjoy anything, right, when you're sick. And it's the same when you've got a mind of ill will or anger or hate. You can't enjoy anything. Your mind has been polluted, has been taken over by something. People will say, why don't we go and... You had a bad day at work, someone offended you, someone hurt you. Your partner will say, why don't we go out for a nice dinner? No, I don't want to. You can see how there's drawbacks to this mind, right? It affects you somehow. And so that's some images the Buddha gave about this mental state of ill will. He also talked about things like hatred as being one of the 3 root defilements. We see that there's disadvantages to this mind in many ways. We see it as a fetter, something that prevents us from getting further, like a trap, something that holds us back. We see ill will being referred to as a like an underlying tendency. Patika, actually patika is the Pali word. It's an underlying tendency that is within us, that is something that lies down with us. This is this word anusaya. It lies down with us. It stays with us. It's always there with us. In many ways, ill will is like a companion that we have in our mind. Many of our experiences are conditioned by this thought of resistance, not wanting, pushing away. And this is how it works. We have an experience that is unpleasant to us. Could be we don't like the taste of the food. Could be we don't like the way that person looked at us. We don't like the music they're playing. We have this experience and some resistance comes up. And then we go back to that feeling of resistance over and over and over again. We keep paying that feeling of resistance attention. The more attention we pay to it, the bigger it grows. As we give more attention to it, we feed it. It gets bigger. And this is how things change from being some resistance, some dislike, to irritability, to getting more angry, to getting more hate, to get grudge, resentment, anger, wanting to hurt, becoming cruel, malevolent, evil. This is how it happens, right? You've probably seen this in your own lives. Something can start very small and irritating, and then it becomes really big and annoying, and then you're like, I tell you what, if they do that one more time. So this is the danger for us. We might think, I'm in control. I'm fine. I know what I'm doing. But there are people in jail today who killed their neighbours with a shotgun because they mowed the lawn. There are people in jail today who ran down cyclists because they feel like they got cut off in traffic. So what I'm pointing out here is the possibility that it could happen to any of us, but also the danger in allowing even the smallest amount of ill will or anger to enter the mind, because we don't know where it will stop. It's very easy for us to kind of, as spiritual people especially, it's very easy for us to imagine ourselves as not like those other people, right? It's very easy for us to be like, oh, well, I'm not like that. It's very hard sometimes for us to see in our own minds just how much hate and ill will there actually is, and how easy it could be for it to get out of control. I don't know, someone showed me a documentary called Wild Wild Country or something like that. It was a documentary about the Rajneesh people, the Osho followers. And these are spiritual people like you. And they ended up poisoning like a whole town of people with salmonella. And then I think doing things like setting off bombs. They ended up becoming a militia. They had armed guards and things like this. And so as spiritual people, we have to be very careful. Remember, so many of the greatest wars throughout history were because of spiritual people, right? And so we need to be careful about how we go through our lives. We need to make sure that if we are spiritual people following spiritual teachings, that we're not actually using those teachings as a way to hurt others or ourselves. So we need to really make sure we're practicing correctly. Otherwise, firstly, we're not making any progress on the path, and secondly, we're kind of perverting our minds. So when the Buddha talked about these things, he talked about the dangers, the drawbacks. And I'll just give a little story about one way that we can consider this, and then we'll do a little bit more meditation. So the Buddha gave a series of 7 things that he said, if we do, will please our enemy. Because we've all got enemies, right? Yeah? We've all got enemies, right? Yeah? So maybe we'll work on some of that today. But the last thing you want that person to do is to be pleased, to be happy because you've done something, right? The last thing you want is to make them happy through your actions, right? So this is how the Buddha taught. It's quite clever. The Buddha is amazing, really. He's like, don't do these things or you'll make your enemy happy. He didn't say, don't have any enemies, right? It's easy to say, yeah? It's easy to say, very difficult to do. It's a process. We're working on it, okay? We're all working on it. We're doing well. So he said, these are 7 things that will please your enemy. So something that will please your enemy is that when you get angry, you look ugly. And it's true, isn't it? When you get angry, you look ugly. So firstly, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge the Buddha and his wisdom in going straight for our ego here, right? I said before that, our hate is very much about our ego, about protecting ourselves. And here the Buddha is saying, well, if you get angry, you'll look ugly, and then your enemy will be like, whoa, look at them, look at how angry they got. And so don't you, what a child's tantrum looks like? Yeah? And that's what we look like when we're angry. Our face turns red, it gets contorted and twisted. Have you ever seen a really angry person like that? Yeah? Hold up a mirror to yourself sometimes. That's our face, right? We look like a little demon, like a little toddler. And that sense of that boiling anger coming up, right? It's there, yeah? You're hot and flushed, you sweat, everything's contorted, you can almost see the steam coming out people's ears. So the first thing that happens when you get angry, you look ugly, and it pleases your enemy. The second thing that happens when you get angry is you lose sleep. And this is true. So before, when I said to you, oh yes, anger, doesn't it feel wonderful? You feel it coursing through your body, yeah? What's actually happening is a release of an adrenaline, hormones, chemicals in your body, right? This is that fight or flight, physical response. And then, when you try to go to bed, your body is still going through these chemical processes. And you find that you can't sleep, right? You're lying there, tossing and turning, And maybe you're still engaging in some of that ill will. Oh, I'll show them tomorrow. I can't wait to plan their downfall. And you kind of, or you're reliving what happened. How dare they say that to me? Who do they think they are? I'll show them. And so this is what we're going through. This is that process of ill will that we see it sometimes when we finally take the time to get to bed. We see it quite clearly, right? It's pretty ugly sometimes what goes on in your minds, right? My mind too. It's pretty ugly, but we see it and it keeps us awake. We can't sleep. So there's this mental aspect, there's also this physical, embodied aspect that prevents us from getting to sleep. And what happens when you don't get enough beauty sleep? Well, you just look even uglier, right? And so the Buddha said that we don't profit. We don't profit from anger and ill will. And this is something that will also please our enemy. You know, when you're angry and you kind of... have you seen people trying to remonstrate with the hotel owners or to like get a deal or a discount or something, and they're really angry and people are like, no, like, you know, you just don't want to deal with someone like that. Or can you imagine someone who is trying to sell something who's really angry and hostile? You know, the Buddha says that you don't profit from this kind of mind state. No good thing will come from it. And so this is something, another disadvantage that will please our enemy. They know that when we're full of anger and hate, we're not going to profit from it. It's not going to do us any good. In fact, more than likely, and this is the fourth thing that will please our enemy, we're going to lose. We're going to lose out on something. I just think about all those footballers who got too angry in the middle of a match and gave a punch to the referee or something. They get a big fine and they lose, right? In the same way, even at the time of the Buddha, if you did something wrong, the king might come along and take away your money. Even if you do something wrong out of anger, you may have to go to court, pay lawyers' fees, you might have to pay some sort of compensation, right? These are the consequences of hate, of ill will. Consequences. You don't profit and you lose. Another thing that would happen is that when you are angry and you are hostile or have ill will, you'll get a bad reputation. Again, the Buddha here, so wise, using our ego against us. You'll get a bad reputation. You know people who are horrible to be around. Yeah? You tell your friends and family too, yeah? Oh, John, gosh, trying to have dinner with John, and he's just always this or he's always that. Or Sue, every time I have a coffee with Sue, she's always on about this thing. Gosh, she's got so much bitterness and anger in her heart. No one wants to hang around with a person like that. No one wants to hang out with you if you're angry and hostile and full of hate, ill will. It's normal, isn't it? You get a bad reputation. People will stop wanting to be with you. People won't want to be around you. You will lose your friends and your family. And this is something that we see in our society. We see people who have become angry and bitter in their old age. Have you seen people like this? I mean, it just breaks my heart to think that they didn't start that way. They didn't start that way. But drop by drop, thought by thought, that's what they've become. And it's stained their mind. So that's all that you see. That's what they've become. And you want to avoid them, right? You don't want to be around them. So this is what happens to those people over time. And the Buddha said that when you are angry or hostile, that you will go to a bad destination. If you have a lot of hate or anger or you hurt people in this life, there will be a consequence in your next life. And so I don't know how many people here believe in past or future lives. So I'm not going to peer pressure you into it or anything like that. Even in this life, we'll see the consequences, yeah? And in the next life, perhaps too. If you don't believe in the next life, focus on this life. If you do believe in future lives, then you should have even more reason to be concerned. So these are things that will please our enemy, right? These are things that will make our enemy happy, that we are suffering, basically, when we have this mind of hate, of ill will. We are the ones who suffer. There is a fake Buddha quote out there, and I love the website fakebuddhaquotes.org, I think, or .com, fake Buddha quotes, because there are so many fake Buddha quotes out there, but this is a good one. Like, getting angry is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. Okay, so it's a fake Buddha quote, but when we get angry, we kind of think, yeah, we're the ones who are going to punish the other person. They're the ones who are going to get the consequences. But actually, we're the ones literally drinking that poison. And so, coming back to this idea of that mindfulness that we want to cultivate as part of our meditation practice, what we need to see when we're mindful is those real disadvantages in our own mind of these kinds of states of mind. We use our mindfulness to see what's going on. And if you really saw the disadvantages in your own mind, then you wouldn't allow even the smallest amount of hate to come into your heart. But because we don't really see just how bad these mind states can be, what can come of them, because we don't really see, we still permit them to come and proliferate. And one thing that I read, which really shocked me, was that 9 out of 10 people have thoughts of harming another. 9 out of 10 people, right? 1, 2, 3. So in this room alone, I'm feeling a little bit unsafe. And there's a lot of people who are troubled by their own mind, who catch themselves wishing harm upon another. And by that I mean things like, I'm going to kill him. I'm going to break his legs. So we have these thoughts. And it's challenging for us to admit it. It's challenging for us to see it. But they're there. Those thoughts are there. We might think, well, it's valid, they're a bad person, they're a politician, they're a this, they're a that. But you know what? The target of our ill will is changing constantly. And that person that you kind of really don't like in the office, the one that you've been resentful towards and bitter towards, they'll leave, and then your mind will find someone else to hate. So what we need to do is to root out this defilement, not just snip around the edges, but to take it out at the roots. And this is something that we learn to do in our meditation practice. We start to see the defilement. We understand it. We see the poison it creates in our mind. And we learn how to not react to it, to not get it, and to not allow it to get hold of our mind. We weaken it, and eventually it will dry up, it will disappear. It is possible. And in my own spiritual life, I have seen this process occurring. I am a much better person than I used to be. Have you also experienced this in your own spiritual practice? Have you become a better person, a less angry person, a less hateful person, a less bitter and twisted person? Have you become more accepting, more tolerant? Have you become more kind and caring and compassionate? And if you've only seen a small development in your heart, then this is something to celebrate, because it means that it is possible for us to change. It is possible for us to come out of habitual ways of thinking, patterns of behavior that harm ourselves and harm others. And so this is why this training that you've embarked upon, this spiritual path that you're walking, is so incredible and so profound and so powerful, because it will have results. It will help you to be a better person. And sometimes as spiritual practitioners, we may not see those results as fast as we would like. We may not see how far we have come. But it's good from time to time to look back and think, oh, actually, you know what? I have made some progress. Or I am making progress. And this will give you a lot of energy and a lot of momentum in your practice. We've got about 20 minutes before we break for lunch. Would you like to do some more meditation, or would you like to ask some questions? Meditation. Okay. So I'm not quite ready yet to introduce the practice of loving kindness. So I just think this session will just come back to that feeling of letting go, letting go, letting go. And after the break, we're going to do some walking meditation. We're going to do some we're going to hear some more Dhamma, and then we're going to do this practice of cultivating love. It is important, though, that we give our mind some time, kind of get more peaceful and more settled before we start introducing this theme of love, and that we're kind of scaffolded into the right place to allow for that seed to grow more quickly. Does that make sense? One question.
With the 7, you mentioned 7.
Yes, I'm not sure that I actually did mention 7.
I think you did.
I think I did 6.
Oh, 6. Yeah.
Okay, so it's been a long time since I've thought of these, but thank you for putting me on the spot. Okay, you look ugly.
Yeah.
You lose sleep. You don't profit. You lose. You get a bad reputation. Your family and friends desert you, and you go to a bad destination. That's 7.
Okay.
Oh, I did okay. Yeah. I probably could have introduced them a bit better, but I get carried away.
I just wanted to know them all.
Yep. Shall we go through them again? Just in case. I might have done a trick with my fingers then. Okay, so 7 things that will please your enemy, right? You look ugly. You lose sleep. You don't profit. You lose. You get a bad reputation. Your friends and family abandon you. And you go to a bad destination, a bad rebirth. Yeah. It's good to reflect upon, right? I just love how smart the Buddha was. Like, yeah, really mess with their egos, mess with their heads, get them to understand it. You know, there are bad consequences to this. Because actually a lot of our culture, especially today, we have like an outrage culture, we have a rage culture, and we have a lot of enablers that get us to be angry. And so we feel that this is kind of something that's okay, that's good, that we should do. We feel entitled to our rage. And in some ways there's a very basic human need to kind of feel powerful and to have a sense of power, to have a sense that we have control. This is some part of what rage is about, you know, this idea to kind of to feel like we're in charge. I'm in charge of this. And so a lot of like social media kind of confirms this, and cancel culture and talk about radio and things like this. And so we have a lot of enablers that make us feel like that. And later on I'll talk about how maybe anger is a useful thing, that it's okay to experience anger, because sometimes it tells us that there's something wrong. We need that information, you know? But we've got to develop some skillfulness, some wisdom around how we experience anger and what we do with it. I'll talk about that a bit later. So we're going to do just 15 minutes just to kind of absorb what we've heard and to just come back to that feeling of letting go, becoming a little bit Teflon, allowing things to slide away. And so let's close our eyes again. And just come back to that idea of letting go. Feeling that we can let go, that we don't need to hold on. So letting go of the past. letting go of the future, being free from the past, free from the future, being present, here, now, aware, but